the thing that got your business moving might be the very thing that is stopping you from scaling. Because in the beginning, it works, right? The founder energy, the early mornings, the brute force, the late nights. Uh, but eventually, working harder and harder becomes the bottleneck. And so today we're going to talk about a founder versus an operator. We're going to talk about systems, and we're going to talk about why brute force eventually breaks your business. But first, who am I? What up, you guys? Sage here. I'm CEO, founder of Legacy Africa. At Legacy Africa, we help entrepreneurs scale their businesses. And so part one, the launch phase. So early business does require intensity, requires speed, requires force. You do everything, and that's normal. Here's the interesting thing about it is in the early stages of business, you have to execute. There's no room for systems. There's no room to be overthinking and overanalyzing everything. You just decide what it is that you want to do, who it is that you want to serve, and you go. You do it because the marketplace will give you much more feedback than any book can. Because anything you listen to, anything you read, any of that stuff is made off of outdated data. The live data is out there now with the people in terms of what the marketplace wants right now. And the cool thing about it is when you're in the marketplace, you can feel and sense shifts in the marketplace. Like, okay, do you know what's actually happening right now? People are moving from this. Like, this has worked for the past 10 years, but people are beginning to creep into a phase where they're looking for that. And if I can start now to develop that, then by the time the market is hungry for it, I can have it built. So those type of things only happen from you being in there in the weeds, doing everything yourself. You really get a pulse for the market, and then you get to create the pulse and rhythm that your business needs in order to get the customers to begin with. And then you push even harder to increase sales velocity. You push even harder to generate leads. You push even harder to meet the right people, form the partnerships, do this, do that. Boom, 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 boom. Right? Very, very founder led. You're the hero. And if you want to stay being the hero, if you think the answer is continuing to work harder and harder, maybe I just need the right system. I need to calendar time manage more. I need, like, once you've already found work within yourself, once you've rolled your sleeves up and worked every hour, every waking hour of the day, then it becomes different. Then the problem becomes different. The problem becomes the systems that you have within your business. And so we're going to talk about the rocket analogy. Rocket boosters are designed to burn out. Think about that. Think about the fact that you're working so hard, you're pushing so hard, you increase the velocity of the business so much. That exact motion, if you continue, like, that is not meant to be a sustained effort. You're not supposed to be doing that for years on end. That works for a stage. You get the ball rolling, and then you delegate. And then here's the thing, it's not that you're going to now all of a sudden retire and no longer be in the business, no longer work as hard, but you're going to be working super hard on the business while you have other people working in the business, making sure that the systems and processes you've been developing and documenting keep happening. So you get to a stage where the things you do need to keep happening in order to keep the lights on. But at the same time, you need to start building out the systems and processes that will make sure that those things can keep going independent of you being there. You need to have people working on what we do now so you can focus on what we're about to do next and what happens after that. If you don't shift from a doer to a manager to a director to an architect of systems, then your business is ultimately going to fail, because you have to touch everything. You have to micromanage everything. You are robbing your company of its CEO to be the admin clerk. Don't do that. So rocket boosters are designed to burn out. They're not meant for the whole journey. And that's the reason why that's super powerful is you think about a rocket booster, lots of energy, boom, boom. It's what gets the rocket out of the atmosphere, right? And it's what it needs in order to penetrate and get into orbit, to escape the Earth's gravitational pull. It has to push very, very hard. And then it detaches. Why? Because if it doesn't detach, it will weigh the rocket down, it will stay at that burning terminal, and the whole ship will burn up. The whole ship will be destroyed. That the same goes for your founder identity. Same goes for your need to be the hero, the need to sweat at the brow in order to feel like you've done something today. Your inability to just do deep work, to have an empty calendar, do deep work, do the things that are gonna be the larger plays that the whole company is gonna make, that are gonna shift your positioning in the market. You're not gonna have time to do those things if you're busy on that hamster wheel, on the day to day grind, the entire time. So you need to shed the identity of being that kind of a person in order to allow the rocket, the business, to ascend even further. Then the secondary thrusters kick in. They're different from the initial thrusters. Secondary thrusters kick in, boom, and so on and so forth, and you keep going. And there's energy needed all throughout the process. Not to say that, oh, once you escape the atmosphere, then the work is done. The work is far from done. It is easier to regress from here than it is to press forward. But if you do consistently apply that pressure, build those systems, document those processes, you will eventually put yourself in a position where you have built a machine that can predictably get an outcome for a user, for an avatar, for your customer. And that's ultimately what people pay for. They pay for outcomes. They don't pay for you to work all day. They don't care how long it takes you. I just want the thing that I want done. That's the ultimate thing, the ultimate place that you want to get to. So make sure that you're shedding that identity when the time does come. And so the shift becomes, eventually sales increase, the customers increase, your deal flow increases, the problem changes, and the bottleneck becomes systems. Meaning what? Meaning you get to that spot where you've built out so much presence in the marketplace that deals are inbound. You're no longer the one that's going out to fish, to hunt, to kill anymore. There are so many clients to service, leads to work, people to get from cold or to rekindle, or to, there's so many things that you have to do, as well as, in my case, to be honest with you, there's the content as well. There's the creation of the content. There is the cutting up and posting. And posting is a whole process that I've documented as well. So there are many things that still have to continue to happen, while at the same time I'm nowhere. I haven't started on my email up. I haven't started on certain things that are long term nurture that need to be a part of the system. I've prepared so many systems so that I could do these things when I get to this stage. And what I need at this stage of my business personally is help. And I feel that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially African entrepreneurs who are starting from zero, don't know to ask for help when you get to a certain stage. They believe everything should be founder led up until you get to a certain point. Or maybe I'm accusing us. Maybe it isn't just an African entrepreneur thing. Maybe it isn't just a South African entrepreneur thing. Maybe it's an entrepreneurship at large thing, where we believe that grinding harder is always the answer, and you're just being lazy and this and that. But realistically, if you're working most waking hours of the day to the point where you can barely do the basic functional things that you're supposed to be doing as a human being to live, you know what I'm saying? You can barely eat, you can barely, do those types of things. Then it gets to a stage, my brother, where, especially if you haven't documented your processes yet, do that hard work. Develop scripts, develop steps. Okay, here's the issue fundamentally, is I'm even assuming that people know what a system and a process are. So a process is clear, defined steps, like literally from this is how I do this. This is the first thing I do. This is the second thing I do. This is the third thing I do. Like, to the detail. I'll give you my posting process. Is obviously I've recorded the video, so there's maybe 30 raw videos of me sitting to camera talking, that are shorts, so that I film them vertically, the whole nine, so at least that pre-work is done. And so the process is, you click the video, and then you add a caption to the video. The caption is typically going to be, or you add a visual hook. The visual hook is typically going to be the first thing that I say, because I verbally hook, and I want the visual hook to match that. Okay, I verbally hook, and then you take that, you take that visual hook. It's usually gonna want to span across the entire video. You make it only 6 seconds long. After that, you go to captions. You enter the captions. There's a specific kind of captions that I add on my posts. You make sure that the captions fit in the screen, because sometimes they'll naturally be big and they'll overlap. So make sure that they're at least small enough that even when you go on Instagram where it's going to zoom in, it never overlaps, regardless of what the longest text is. And sometimes you might have to, you get what I'm trying to say? Okay, that's done. Next thing is you're gonna click the post button. You're going to click the next button, and you're going to have to add a caption. I have very specific captions depending on what the campaign is, or what I want the wider audience to be aware of. That's going to be the caption. And then you post. You do that 3 times over for 3 different videos, and then you go back and you add music to the first one, you add music to the second one, you add music to the third one, and you take those 6 videos and you then go on to Instagram, and boom, boom, you know what I'm saying? Boom, 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 and so on and so forth. And there's an entire, I fully have flushed out I know exactly what I do in order to, for example, right now on Instagram alone, I'm sitting on 50, almost I'm sitting on 47, peaked at 49. I'm right now, today, last I checked, at 48 point something thousand views within the last 28 days, and it's staying. So I know what inputs get that as a consistent output. You get what I'm trying to say? And I don't know. Maybe it's still gonna tank, or whatever the case. 'Cause I did get a spike due to some podcasts and stuff like that I did earlier, and I think I'm gonna keep that engine going, and it's gonna elevate. But anyway, I know what the base. My base is the videos. My base is the me talking to camera, blah blah. I know how to keep that base consistent so that it at least doesn't drop below. Like, it's never gonna drop below 20. It's never gonna drop below 25, 30 ish. Like, so we'll see if it'll maybe stick around that 40-ish, heading towards 50, especially now that I'm going to add the other stuff. Whatever. My point is, I know what it takes I know what my content engine is. I know what the inputs are that keep that baby running. But me doing that every single day is not the most important thing that I could be doing, because it's a repetitive process. And when you've made a repetitive process, when you've made, so the process is those steps. The system is the entire thing as a whole. If you look at what I do across all the different platforms, as well as the long form, there's an entire system around how I manage my content. And I've documented that so that I can now give it to someone else and say, listen, you're going to have to do this. If you do this, this will continue to occur. And the beautiful thing about that is, as soon as that happens, I get time back. And the time that I get back, I can focus on the next most important things that only I can do at this stage for my business. You know what I'm saying? Like, only I can um, architect where it is that we're gonna go from here. So, and the same goes for everyone in each of their business. So I'll digress. You do need the systems, you need the processes, and you need those in order to delegate. The difference between delegation and abdication is, when you delegate, there's a system and process that exists, and you put the person. You There's a function that needs to be fulfilled. There's a system, there's a process, and you find someone to match that system and process. So you don't just find smart people and say, "Hey, I need my content posted. Figure it out." Right? Because then they'll come in, they'll do it their way, and you're like, no, don't do it like I do it, or do it my way, or people are gonna have their own unique, tiny twists, and this and that. It's like, no, this is how this is done. This is the function that I need fulfilled. You get what I'm trying to say? And they'll come in, if they follow the system, they follow the process. The results should remain exactly the same, independent of who is the person behind pressing the buttons that need to be pressed. So that's delegation. Abdication is when you chuck someone in the deep end and say they should figure it out. So the core of delegation is trust as well. Like, an organization only moves at the speed of trust. So you need to trust that the person is competent. You need to trust that the person can do what they can do, has your best interest at heart, etc. And then you can just, when if you equip them, you train them, you can literally just chuck the inputs at them, and they will produce the outputs, right? Not not dwelling on that too long. The trap is that a lot of founders keep forcing to work harder. They keep forcing themselves to go even more and more and more. They keep doing more manually. They keep staying involved in everything, and they become the bottleneck, right? And I know we don't intend to do that. It's an accidental thing that happens where if everything has to go through you, then the fastest anything in your business is ever going to go is how fast you can process information. Uh, an organization speeds up at the rate of the amount of cannons you can add, not the amount of cannonballs. And so, if you think about it, there are certain uh, actions that need to get done, and those are the cannonballs. So you can increase the number of cannonballs, but if you only have one cannon, then things will only get done as quickly as you can fire. So the idea is let me add more cannons, and then you can triple the rate at which the entire system is firing. That's the basic concept. Let's not add more cannonballs. Like, yeah, obviously we do need more cannonballs. We need more actions done, but not right now. Right now, the most important thing is let's increase the throughput of the entire organization, and then we can figure out what the next cannonballs look like, or what kind of cannonballs we need, and therefore what kind of cannons are we going to need in the future. So the real work becomes building the systems, delegating, documenting, having a process, and building infrastructure. Bless me. I'm literally getting over something right now. But it becomes systems, delegation, documentation, process, and infrastructure. Your job becomes to work on the business as just as much or more than you work in the business. You need to get people to work in the business, but working on the business, building those systems, building that infrastructure is the most important thing you can do at this stage. When you become the bottleneck in terms of when there are too many things to do in your day, the answer is not let me fix my calendar. The answer is let me get the correct software, let me get the correct people. And that is what will allow your business to continue growing. That's what will allow your business to continue moving. And so brute force can launch a business, but systems are what allow it to survive orbit. At some point, the founder has to evolve into an operator. And there's a couple of interesting ways this can be done. It's either you take the path of the technician and you continue to develop and hone your skill technically to the point where demand outweighs supply. You continue to raise your prices indefinitely until your premium pricing and all you're doing all day is what you want to do, right? That's the path of the technician. Or you can take the path of the architect and you can get into the game of business and figure that out and become a systems builder, a systems architect, and master that skill. But regardless, the goal of entrepreneurship in order for a business to grow is to get out of your own way. And so if you take anything from this, find ways to get out of your own way. Thank you for watching. If you are an entrepreneur and you are interested in scaling your business, Legacy Africa, the link is in the description box down below. If you're not an entrepreneur and you just enjoyed watching the video, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. And I've been seeing some of you guys comment. I appreciate that so much, man. It really does mean a lot to me. If you did in fact enjoy the video, please do hit the subscribe button. Until next time, I have been Sage, standing on business. Signing out.